from his lawyer. Disappointingly, Andy instead is today the most recent in a long line of Asian Americans who are unfairly singled out and
Oh,
forced
an
to pay
identity.
for
Oh,
daring to be active in the political sphere.
I love it. Yeah, that's why they're going after him, because he's Asian.
Yes, yes. Stop AAPI hate.
It's just like when Sheng Tao gets elected. Like every article isn't about how she actually voted on the city council, cutting city funding for police, and not being the greatest public servant. Every article is like, oh, first Hmong mayor, first Asian American woman mayor. It's like all this representation bullshit. Well, couldn't you apply that here? Oh, first Vietnamese garbage cartel FBI investigation.
Totally.
You're like, who cares about these superlatives? It's
By the way, I'm more impressed by so the Duongs started as going around the neighborhood picking recycling, like there were refugees who were going around the neighborhood picking out recycling out of people's recycling bins. Like
I
at least
also
that's
read
the
that
origin story.
the Duong patriarch was a wealthy industrialist who fled Vietnam too. So maybe he started again from the bottom, but he had some experience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the full story though, so
But yeah, neither do I. But also towards what you're saying, like even now, even today, like in that New York Times article, which is decent, but like when you get to the second half, there's just this obligatory paragraph about like Sheng Tao had a really difficult life. She was a Hmong refugee. She was a victim of domestic violence. She lived in her car with her son. It's like all the biographical points from her, like, from her political mailers. And it's like in every single article, even articles that are about how she's facing like a combined like 95-year sentence.
Yeah, how about
It's
the fact
wild.
that she presided over the city of Oakland? Speaking of fire, it's closing its fire stations and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have police or even call centers to respond to 911 calls. I mean, oh, I hate it. But yeah, speaking of DEI, this is a
There you go.
let's change topics to Israel.
Okay.
Um, I, I'm I think for a lot of the Trump administration, I'm trying to remain cautiously optimistic that there could be some good outcomes here. And this seems like one of the very first. He's not even sworn in yet. That Steve Witkoff, am I
Yeah.
pronouncing that right? His close friend. He was a lawyer for Trump back in the '80s. He switched from being a real estate lawyer to be a real estate developer himself and built this empire of apartment buildings and commercial real estate. Been close to the Trump family for a very long time. His kids do business on crypto with Trump's kids, and they're very intertwined. So like, close friend of Trump goes and takes the same deal essentially that was on the table back in May of last year, that Biden and Netanyahu and the Hamas leaders in Qatar had already kind of hammered out, or at least the outline of that. And he gets it done faster and better, and actually in a material way, uh, in a way that all of these blue-blooded, Ivy League educated Biden State Department diplomats couldn't do. Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Jacob Lew, Amos Hochstein. Biden's got this elite kind of Yale educated, always within the kind of blob of the State Department, CIA world, working on this, and they're completely feckless. Netanyahu ignores them. They just give more and more money to a very unpopular war, and that's killed a lot of people, and that has not returned any of the hostages. So it's bad for both sides. I think it's bad for Israel. It's obviously horrible for the Palestinians. And Trump, just by being aggressive and saying like, "Look, we're going to screw you if this deal isn't done by the time I'm inaugurated," Netanyahu comes to the table, and it seems like it's at least moving forward in principle.
Can you recount also what Witkoff said when Netanyahu tried to hide behind the Sabbath, just because it's so
Right,
amusing?
and just mind you, Wickoff is, I believe, Jewish as well,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
he meets with the negotiators in Qatar. It's a Friday night. He calls Netanyahu. He's like, "Look, I'm coming from Qatar. I'm going to be there in Israel." Netanyahu's or directly, or his people, or says, no, that's Shabbos. I don't work on Saturday. He goes, no, I'm coming, and you're going to meet with me.
Yeah.
And he goes and he forces a meeting.
No, his quote was, "We all know he's hitting light switches
Yeah, yeah, thank
about
you.
Netanyahu." Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
you can go through the public record and see Netanyahu doing stuff on Saturdays, so it's
yeah.
not a secret. So
But just to play devil's advocate, I mean, it's a great story. Like it's a fun story about how Trump just kind of like pile drive this through. But is it not also the case that the reason why they couldn't get a deal before like one of the reasons why the deal was unachievable before and is achievable now is because of the level of absolute destruction that's taken place in the interim, that Israel is now at a point where perhaps where a deal that was on the table, I mean the facts on the ground are different than they were last May, and the deal that was on the table didn't look as good then than it does now when Hamas has been further dismantled and the civilian population has been further punished, because let's face it, that's the goal, one of the military objectives. And so maybe it was like it was a ripe time for them to take the deal, and it wasn't just about Trump.
yeah,
I'm just
I think
about
that's definitely